Yeah, so in the last video we saw promise.all and promise.all settled. Here we are going to see two new methods available, promise.race and promise.any. Now, promise.race and promise.any are not that frequently used, but there can be some scenarios where this can be helpful. So let's see them. First of all, we are going to start with promise.race. So if you remember, earlier we had something like this, that promise 1, promise 2, promise 3, and we had a promise.all, and there we passed an array of promises, right? Here also we are going to have a bunch of one or more promises, and instead of promise.all we are going to simply replace it with promise.race, but still the argument is still an array of promises. Okay, so we are having a few promises and we are passing them as an array, but the difference comes in this p's resolved value. So the final promise which promise.all used to give, that promise used to resolve with another array with all the resolved values, if you remember, right? In case of race, it is not going to resolve to all of the values, rather it is going to resolve to just the first value, or it is going to reject with the first value. So whatever all the three promises are there, or for that matter any number of promises, whichever is the promise which resolves first or rejects first, that is the final settled value, either rejection or resolved, for this promise which is coming from promise.race. So let's see that thing. So we see here the syntax, set timeout resolve 300a, and this syntax we already learned in set timeout when we were doing, is that set timeout, first argument is obviously the callback, which has to be called, and has to be called after how much time, that is provided by the second argument. So after 100 milliseconds this resolve is going to be called. After second argument, whatever you are passing, that thing is passed, second, third argument, fourth argument, after second, whatever the arguments are there, they are passed as arguments to the callback function which you are passing, right? So which means that this thing is completely equivalent to something like this. If you write something like this, and rather than providing argument here, you can directly provide argument here. Okay, so both of these statements are completely equivalent. And in this case, just one argument is needed, because resolves with just one argument, whatever argument you are providing. So there's no need of the fourth or fifth argument, right? The third argument will be the argument which is going to be passed with resolve. But in order to write somewhat less characters, we will use this syntax only for now. Okay. So yeah, this is my P1, and let's create a few more. Let's say P1, P2, P3. So let's say this is P2, this is P3, and they are resolving with the different values A, B, C, and right now let's take different times also. Later we'll see that what happens when the timings are also same. But yeah, so you can see that this third promise is resolving after 100 millisecond. This is after 200, and this is after 300 millisecond, right? Now earlier we had promise.all, if you remember, right? So let's see what happened there. We saw that it would resolve with all the data, and here we see that all the data is what, in the order in which the promises are given, A, B, C, and that's why if P1, P2, P3 are resolving with A, B, C, and that's why the data is A, B, C. And if you remember, then if this any one of them, doesn't matter first one or last one, any one, it waits for settlement. The first not first, it waits for all settlement or the first rejection. You understand? All settlement or first rejection, which means that, let's say instead of this, let's say the first one is resolved but the second one is rejected, then here only it can know that that the whole promise, I don't need to wait for this 300 milliseconds in order to see that what happens to P1, because I have already seen that P2 is rejected, because now you can see that it is going to be rejected with error B, right? But had this P2 also been resolved, then it will wait for all settlement, right? So all settling of every promise or rejection of at least one promise. That is how all works, right? But the main thing is that if instead of reject it is resolved, then everything is resolving, we get the whole data. That is the difference where the race comes in, right? If you are using race, then what happens is that this P will resolve or reject with the whatever the first encounter of settlement happens. First encounter of settlement here is C, right? C, because it is 100 millisecond, and this is 200, 300. So obviously the first settlement will happen of P3. And what type of settlement? That is a resolution, not rejection, right? That's why it is coming in this then part, data C, right? If had it been let's say this is reject, had it rejected, then also it will still deal with P3 only, because that is the first one settled. Just the difference will be that this time the C will be the reason for rejection rather than resolved value, right? So it is going in ERR, as you can see that catch block it is going in, and ERR it is printing, right? So yeah, this is the difference between race and all. That if race is there, then if everything is resolving, I'm getting C, because this is the first settled. If some are resolving and some are rejecting, doesn't matter, whatever is the first one to resolve or reject. In this case, the first one is rejecting, right? So it is going to give us C, right? So you will understand, had it been, let's say this is 100 and this is 200, right? Then it would give us B rather than, because yeah, at 200 it is rejecting, but I will never reach this 200 millisecond, because at 100 millisecond only I see that I have got a resolved promise, and race is just waiting for one of the resolution or rejection, right? So the first one to resolve or reject, the first one to settle is P2, and that's why I'm ready with my answer from P2 promise only, right? And that's why the answer is going to be data B. Okay, so yeah, that is going to be the case. Now let's see what if the timeouts, here we saw different times, right? So let's say 100 and both are 100, and for that matter right now let's remove this P3, just take two values, and let's say both are resolved, right? So okay, what should be the answer? Both are at same time, right? But the answer will be A, because it is written first. Whatever is written first, that is scheduled in the event loop first. If I would have written P2 above, so you understand here, ordering of here does not matter. Ordering of here matters, that when this is defined, then which one is scheduled first. Now you see that here B is scheduled first, and that's why that is going to be the answer. Now, and that is what it is happening here also. So here we saw that A will be the answer, and here we saw that if B is coming first, then B will be the answer. Okay. Now let's see, one is resolving and one is rejecting. Okay, then what is going to happen? So for that matter, let's see this, right? And now you can see that, yeah, okay, so yeah, so obviously it is rejecting. Let's say this is P1, this is P2, this is P1, P2, and I was not using that third variable, so let's right now use this thing, right? So we can see that it is resolving with data B, right? And yeah, race is waiting for any one of them too. And which one is the first one? So the first one is, like, both are 100, but the first defined one is this thing, right? The first, so the first one to settle is going to be P1, and that's why it is coming with data B. But had it been opposite, then the first one to settle will be P2, and that will be coming with reason, rejection reason C, and that's why it will go in catch, right? And that's why it will be error C. Okay, fine. So we can see that here the first one to resolve is A, and here the first one to reject is B, and that's why it will come in catch. Okay, now let's see something called any. So any is also similar to race, with a slight difference. So yeah, so let's see. So let's say this is P2, this is P3, and this is A, this is C. Okay, and let's use all the three promises. Now instead of yeah, so we saw race, right? In race, what is going to be the answer? It is going to be A, right? So okay, so all are same time. Let's keep different timing. So let's say 300, 200, 100, right? So in this case, the first one to resolve is this thing, so it will be C. That is fine. Let's convert this race to any, which is the new new function which we are reading now. So Promise.any, what will be the thing now? So what happens that any also waits for the first resolution of the promise. So out of all the three, the first one to resolve is this thing, and that's why even if I change race to any, then also the answer will be same. But then what is the difference between race and any? The difference is that in this case nothing is rejecting, you see. Had something been rejecting, so let's say the first one to reject, the first one is rejecting, let's say, right? then then we saw that in case of race, what was happening? In case of race, the first one to settle is P3, and that is rejecting, and that's why the answer was error C. But if you convert that race to any, then we will see that we are getting B. What is actually happening is that any does not wait for the first resolution of rejection. Any just waits for first resolution, which means that if something is rejecting, then I will ignore that and keep on moving forward and looking. I will keep looking for the first resolution. Okay, so at 100 millisecond only, I have got P3 rejected, but then any will keep waiting for some resolution, and at 200 millisecond it sees that P2 is resolved, and that's why it comes with the data from P2. So it is any simply ignores all the rejections. So that is the difference, right? In case everything is resolved, then any and race is same. The difference only comes when some of them are resolving and some of them are rejecting. Then all the rejections are like sort of don't care condition for for any, right? In case of race, the first rejected will be taken care of. Okay, so that is the difference. So you can see that all are resolved, then it does not matter. Still, the answer will be whatever the first resolves. But the difference comes when something is rejecting. Then you are seeing that here the answer will be this thing. The first resolved value. First resolved value is 200, right? Now, and that's why answer is B. Now, what if this is also rejecting? So let's say this is also rejecting. What will happen then? Then it will give A, because any keeps on waiting for any resolved value, right? And now like at 100 millisecond I've got rejection, 200 millisecond I've got rejection. That's why at 300 millisecond I got resolution, and that's why now I'm this Promise.any, the final promise, is resolving with data A. Okay, now the obvious question will be that what if all are rejecting? I am waiting for a resolved promise, and among all the values, among all the promise values provided, none of them are resolving. But Promise.any is waiting for some resolution. It is just ignoring all the rejections, right? In this case, what will be the answer? Actually, in this case, error will come, and that error is called aggregate error. Name does not matter, but simply it is showing you the message that all promises are rejected, which is not expected. You are using Promise.any, so please ensure that at least one of them are resolving, right? If all of them are rejecting, then the Promise.then final promise will give you will throw you an error, and that you can that's why you can see that it is going in catch. This error is being printed with the error that all promises are rejected. This is not what we expected. So if everything is rejected, then I get aggregate error. Okay, now let's see the scenario where again here the timings are same, right? So let's say the timings are same. So let's say all are 100, 100, 100, right? Now what will happen? See, first of all, this is any, and let's obviously this time I will get aggregate error. Let's resolve some of them and reject some of them. So again, P1 is rejected, so it will be ignored. P2 and P3. So there is competition between P2 and P3. Both are resolved, but both are resolved at the same time. Okay. So what will the value coming here? Again, B is scheduled first, and that's why B will be resolved. Had P3 been above, then it will be resolved with C, not B, right? And here, obviously, here the ordering will not matter. Whatever is the scheduled ordering, that is going to matter. And in this case, we are going to get C rather than B. Okay. So yeah, as we can see that here we are going to get B, and because this is scheduled first. And if I swap the order, then again I get C rather than B. So this is what we saw. Now, now let's say that yeah. So there are two promises, and one is resolving, one is rejecting. That is fine. So yeah, one is rejecting, one is resolving. That is fine. But let's say rather than giving a promise, I provide some constant value here. Can I provide that, or that is a syntax error? It turns out that is correct. That is correct. Instead of promises, you can provide some value also here. The difference is now that now if there is a value, then like it is sort of like data which is already available. It is sort of a promise which is immediately resolved. Okay, so it will treat it like directly I'm just immediately getting the resolved value 10. So why should I bother to wait for p1 p2, right? So this, and again this is any, right? This is any. So I will simply see that that 10 is available, and that's why 10 is going to be my answer, right? Now had it been, let's say this is also resolved, right? And instead of, let's say, any, you are using all, then in all I think we did not discuss. So here also you can see that whatever the data here you give, all are treated as already resolved values. So you can see that 10 hello all. So if you are giving promise, then resolved value of that promise will come in the array. If you are giving data directly, then that data is directly coming here. Okay, so yeah, that is what we are discussing here. But right now we were seeing we were seeing any. Okay, so yeah, I am just directly providing this 10. So no, but any is like not waiting for all the data. Any is waiting for just the first data, right? The first data is like directly from here only. So why should I bother about going about the resolution of p1 and p2, right? And that's why the answer was 10. And again let's say you pass some hello here. Okay, then you see that data is zero, because in this case the ordering matters, because see, in this case the scheduled timeout scheduled as per the timeout timing, scheduled behavior will be there. But here like you understand that here there is no event loop scheduling. Here there is an array, and like let's say from left to right it is saying that what are the things which are there in the item in this array. And if some of the values are already data and not a promise, then the first one will be considered as the value with which it will resolve. Why? Because any in case of promise.all, it did not matter, because it has to give everything. In case of any, it has to give the only one answer, right? So one answer should be 10 or hello. So in this case it turns out that the order in which it is found in the array, that is the order in which it will be available. But that is only when it is some value is available. If some no value is available, then it is going to p1 and p2 and wait for its settlement, right? And you can understand that does not matter even if it would have been 0 0, which means that it is immediate. But then also this immediate is much more immediate than this, because this immediate is like immediate starting from the next event loop. This is immediate means right now, it is here only it is available, right? So this will resolve with 10 rather than any of the promises. Okay, so it is resolving with 10. But what if there is a situation where you are given a resolved promise rather than some thing, some value. Here you are given a promise, but there is a resolved value. Now here actually, even if this p3 is written after p2, but then also this any will resolve to 10. Why? Because this is already a resolved promise right now. Right now it is a resolved promise, right? This thing will resolve as soon as the next event loop starts, and immediately in the next event loop. But this one is obviously before that, even if it is written first, right? So here there is competition between p2 and p3, and p3 wins even if it is declared after, because it is already a resolved promise. And that's why in this case also the answer will be 10. Yeah, so that will be all among all the topics in promises. Almost all of the things are covered. From the next video we are going to start with some new topic. So that's all for this one. Thanks a lot.